Hey, y'all need a break? Listen to these stories from our /entitled parents, and share your thoughts in the comments below. My mother-in-law tried to stop my wife's life-saving treatments. Allow me to introduce you to my late mother-in-law. I'll call her Carol, for the sake of variety. Though I've heard many stories about her, for the most part I'll stick with things that I witnessed myself. There are enough of them. I don't think Carol ever met a New Age concept that she didn't like. Her expressed goal was to synthesize all religion, science, and mysticism into a unified whole. All of it. To this end, she amassed a large collection of books and stranger objects from her travels, with an especial focus on healing. Her library had volumes about vibration manipulation, curative trampolining, homeopathic color therapy, and on and on. I am not joking or exaggerating here. Her shelves had lots of admittedly pretty mineral crystals, along with bottles of magic goddess essence water, evaporated away, and bogus radon protectors powered by diagrams of geometric figures. Her favorite book, based on the number of annotations and sticky notes, was hundreds of pages of word salad about spiritual beings from the star Arcturus. That's Arcturus spelled with an H, because of h bar, Planck's constant from physics. Except that Planck's constant is denoted by h, and h bar is the reduced Planck's constant. It's important to get the details right when you're dealing with spiritual beings. Her pentagonal home was custom built around an energy vortex that she discovered in the coastal peaks of British Columbia. Carol's parenting was, how shall I put this? More darkly eccentric. She was physically and emotionally abusive to her children. One still has some pencil lead embedded in his hand, from when she stabbed him because she wasn't satisfied with his piano practice. She attacked one with a kitchen knife. She started slut-shaming her daughter, later my wife, as soon as she grew breasts, growing breasts. So she forced her daughter to wear 2 large bathing suits, with the apparent intention of making said breasts look smaller by contrast, but with the actual effect that there were wardrobe malfunctions. She was ashamed that her daughter went into medicine and became a noted specialist, rather than supporting her own non-traditional medical work. My wife got the hell out at age 17, and moved across the country to go to university. For most of the time after that, she went relatively low contact. A decade ago, my wife suffered from a surgical error which resulted in abdominal sepsis, and asked me to call her mother. That made me understand just how deathly serious the situation was. I was to call in the family for what might be the last time. I hadn't grasped that her life was truly at risk until that point. Nothing less would have induced her to try to get her mother to visit. To her credit, Carol hurried out, for what was supposed to be a couple of weeks. It was expected that in that time, my wife would be either dead or on the road to recovery. Carol stayed in our home, and at first things didn't go too badly. For the most part, we just didn't talk about the treatments that my wife was undergoing. Carol did express concern about the antibiotics that were being given, since according to her own views, antibiotics did nothing but harm. But a couple of weeks stretched into a couple of months, and Carol became harder to live with. She was angry when I stroked my wife's hair with my hand, because I was blocking the energy from her chakra. She started blaming me for having somehow caused the nausea that the botched surgery was supposed to cure. I drove her out to pick up a magical concoction of essential oils, on the condition that she check with one of the doctors before applying them. I pointed out that if the mixture had the power to heal, then it also had the power to cause harm, which Carol denied. When we got back to the hospital, I nabbed one of the residents when we reached my wife's floor, to ask about that. Carol became furious about that, and it was clear that she had had no intention of talking with the doctors. At home, she became more abusive to me. She was claiming that I was abusing my wife by not letting her have her things in the house. At that point, I lost my temper, the first time I'd yelled at a person in literally a couple of decades. I told her that almost everything in sight was actually her daughter's, displacing my stuff, the sofas, the piano, tables and chairs, the bookshelves, and the electronics. The shelves for the CDs and DVDs were mine, but half the contents were hers. Carol wanted to know if I'd be continuing the herbal remedies after she left, and I told her that that was up to my wife. I'd continue them if she wanted, I'd stop them if she preferred. Carol screamed that I was abusing my wife by following her own wishes rather than her mother's. On the night before Carol was finally supposed to be heading out, I was restless. That particular nightmare was about to end, but my wife was still quite ill. I got to thinking about that essential oil mixture, which included both oil of cloves and oil of cinnamon. Those are both strongly irritating if left on the skin, and Carol had been painting my wife's feet with the stuff. Her feet were, apparently, the correct energy points to draw out the infection. I went online and found the manufacturer's instructions, which specified that the oil needed to be significantly diluted with some neutral oil if it was going to be applied to the skin. Carol hadn't even been using the stuff properly. Well, That explained why the skin on my wife's feet was yellow and starting to peel. But Carol was furious when I calmly pointed out the problems that she was creating, out of ignorance. A few days after Carol left, my wife took a turn for the worse and had to go back into the intensive care unit. And I dreaded the phone call that I had to make, not because of the bad news, but because I anticipated how Carol would react. And she didn't disappoint. If you really loved her, you'd put her back onto the herbal oil and stop the antibiotics. You know perfectly well they don't do a damn lick of good. At which point, I hung up. I had other things to worry about. My wife pulled through, after months in hospital and 3 stays in ICU. She's still in poor health. I told her that I was putting my foot down. Under no circumstances was her mother welcome under my roof again. She had grossly abused her privileges as a house guest. I didn't care about the family custom that family members were always welcome to stay as guests. I would not stay under the same roof as her mother. Having heard my stories, and based on her own experiences, my wife agreed. A few years ago, Carol died, much as she had lived. She was diagnosed with metastasized lung cancer. Although she did undergo some real medical therapies, she relied mostly on her quack remedies, pawpaw twig powder, whey protein immune boosters, and the like, the usual crap that ethics-free swindlers pawn off on desperate sufferers. She firmly believed that all the little white spots on her lung x-rays were a good sign, and that her rapid weight loss indicated that her boosters were draining the cancer away. If there's some existence after death, I hope she came to appreciate all of the harm that she did in life. Except, a couple of nights after she passed away, I was driving from the hospital back to the Energy Vortex house. The rental car's navigation device suggested a shorter route than I'd taken to get there. But that route turned into a back road, into a rough road in the hills, into a track through the forest. And, in pitch darkness apart from my headlights, over a rocky bump and directly into a tree trunk. Luckily, I was traveling slowly, and stopped in time. As I paused, shaken, I got to wondering if there might be something to Carol's worldview after all, and if her vengeful spirit might have possessed the GPS device. Making one last try at killing me. Leaving a 2- and 4-year-old with random woman, me, and her toddler. So this just happened and I'm so pissed. So this week has been rough. My toddler is going through some rebellious phase, my husband was away all week with our car, and my mother-in-law who babysits for us is on a vacation. I'm a work-from-home mom and there were some emergencies at work. Let's just say I'm exhausted. So today I took my daughter outside for a long walk with a stroller and decided to grab a lunch at a local food court. As I get our things, she's being really fussy, but I managed to calm her down. A dad with 2 small kids sits next to us and places his kids on high chairs, almost barstool height. Not children's high chairs but regular adult ones without straps or even a back. He strikes up a short conversation with me as our daughters are similar ages, and then when I'm trying to feed my kid I hear him say, "So, guys, you look after each other in the bags, the nice lady is here, I'll go grab a coffee." And before I say anything he's gone. I was surprised, like very surprised, but alright, I can understand a fellow parent being tired and needing a coffee. I bet he'll be back in a minute, right? Nope. 15 minutes later my meal is completely untouched as I try to keep my toddler sitting while persuading 2 kids I've never seen before to not jump down from their bar stools. The older one was nice and wanted to chat, but also tried to jump down and go look for his father multiple times. The younger one is just a toddler herself and is afraid of the height, so every time I turn around to my daughter, she goes to jump down on the hard floor. I'm losing it. This is not what I need today. Another 15 minutes later, so half an hour in total, the dad comes back with a Starbucks cup. The Starbucks is not even in the food court, it's on the other end of the mall. He goes, "Sorry guys, there was a queue." And doesn't even look at me. I feel myself ready to say something nasty, so I just grab my completely cold food, wave bye-bye to the kids and leave with my daughter. WTF? Who does that? What would he do if I just up and left? If my child started screaming and I just had to leave? The place was crowded, he'd never find his kids, who were nice enough to tell me they were 2- and 4-year-old. I feel like a gullible idiot for just caring for that idiot's kids, but I couldn't live with myself if something happened to them. None of that was their fault. Thank you so much for reading my rant. My daughter just fell asleep and I needed to get this out. ETA, thank you to all the nice comments, you're awesome. And to the, I would have taken them to police/security/move tables, I get your point, but have you ever tried to move through a crowd with just one fussy toddler? Imagine 3 in a stroller, that takes at least double the hands that I had, lol. Mother-in-law buys us a 2-day, weekday hotel stay in her city as a Christmas gift. Husband, 37, and I, 30 female, live a 9-hour drive away from mother-in-law. No kids. For Christmas, without checking with us first, She bought us a hotel from Tuesday to Thursday during a random week in the summer. She told us it was a trip for us lovebirds to do whatever we want. Sure, Jan. I started a new job last summer and don't have paid vacation for a year, government. I also have to have someone watch our 2 dogs while we're away. We are also responsible for paying for our flights as well. So it's a big hit financially for a vacation we didn't want in the first place. Anyway, husband and I were doing some planning for what we are wanting to do. I have family in their area and husband has other family as well. Mother-in-law finds out and tells us we need to spend the whole trip with her. We were planning on spending all Wednesday with her. But then she goes into a guilt trip about how we never see her. For the record, we saw her last summer and at Christmas. Anyway, she wants to spend Wednesday and Thursday with us and is now saying the trip was for her to spend time with us. No crap. But we fly in Tuesday night and fly out Friday morning, only flights available. Which means I won't be able to see my family unless I extend our trip, and expenses. I got 10 text messages at midnight, 11 p.m. her time, last night about why we need to focus on her for the trip. She has surgery, not while we're there but later in the summer for a shoulder injury. She doesn't get time off besides this. I don't even have this time off. She can't travel, etc. Her tone was rude and she's never talked to me like that before. Today she told my husband she wants to sell her house so she can contribute to a down payment on a home we're saving for. We said we don't want to talk about that until after the summer. How do we put an end to the generosity that is actually leveraged to control our behavior? Is there a way to gently shut this down? She doesn't listen and isn't interested in our opinions or perspective and doesn't respect boundaries. Lol, please help me. Surprise visits are a hard no for me. Apparently that makes me entitled. My mother has always had a hard time with boundaries. Growing up, she was fond of telling me it was her room because it was her house and she could come and go as she pleased and snoop through my space at will. Same with my car or my phone or anything else. No matter if I was paying for it with my money or not, she had rights to everything. After I got married and moved across the country, she followed a year later to be close in case I needed her. She settled in a town about an hour away, and I saw her a few times a month. She was generally a good grandmother, very involved, and nobody could say she didn't love my daughter a ton. She was given a key to my house for various reasons and didn't abuse it too much. But she had a hard time recognizing that I was an adult and made the rules for my own child, not her. Mild things like wanting to hand feed my 7-year-old and telling me I should allow things that I did not, arguing with me in front of her about my rules, that kind of stuff. After I separated from my ex-husband and moved into my own house with my daughter, she was again given a key for emergencies, and this is when she started to cross some lines. She'd go shopping and drop things off at my house, still an hour away from her own house, and just leave bags of things in various places. She's always been a bit of a compulsive shopper and a hoarder, if I'm being honest, but these things were usually useful. Cases of paper towels, bottles of laundry detergent, piles of conditioner. That kind of thing. But she'd just show up unannounced and leave things in my house. Usually in my, unfinished, basement floor. The basement flooded every time it rained for a half hour, and these things frequently got wet or ruined. I asked her to stop multiple times because I was tired of throwing away soaked rolls of toilet paper, but she continued doing it the whole time I lived there. Frustrating. Then I moved back across the country. She again came with me, actually living in my house for a few months until she could find her own. This was a disaster. Her old space invading behavior from my childhood came roaring back. She'd barge in my bedroom and bathroom without knocking. She'd argue with me about my parenting and openly disparage me to my child when I wasn't around. She'd buy 15 bottles of dishwashing liquid because they were on sale and get angry when I told her I didn't need them. I asked her to escalate her move out for the sake of our relationship. She found her own place but kept the key to my house. Her random drop-ins increased to multiple times a week. I'd come home to whatever random haul she bought that day just sitting on my table. Or she'd need to borrow a carving knife and just let herself in while I was at work to grab it. I'd be in the shower and get out to find her in my kitchen, having not gotten an answer when she knocked, so just letting herself in with her key. I asked her to stop several times. I don't like unannounced visitors and I hate knowing someone was in my house while I was not there. She continued unabated. She let herself in at one point and went through my daughter's things, which prompted my daughter to ask me if she could confront her grandmother and ask her not to do that again. My mother went ballistic and said she'd give the key back but never did. She continued to show up randomly, but now saying she knew she should have called first and just forgot. My daughter and I moved again last summer. I was adamant my mother not be given a key to this house or the security code. She has continued to show up randomly. My significant other opened the door a few times, mostly because he isn't as good at hiding as my daughter and I are. If he's not home, We don't answer. She showed up unannounced last week with stuff for Valentine's Day. I work from home so I was here. I was on a conference call so did not go to the door. My significant other happened to be home and opened it for her, so she came in and chatted for 10 minutes and then left. This was the last straw for me. I'm over these surprise visits, especially when I'm working and my bosses can hear my dogs going nuts because someone new is here. So I text her and tell her for the 100th time to stop. I don't care what the occasion is or what she just had to drop off. Stop showing up at my house unannounced. This is a boundary she needs to respect. And she loses her mind. I'm a controlling, entitled brat who can't tell her what to do. She was just trying to do something nice for Valentine's Day. She hopes I have a child so hateful and mean one day. I can bet my sweet ass she won't do anything else for me, ever. She's having surgery next week and needed to talk about it with me. She has a very busy schedule that day and lots of places to go, so that's why she couldn't call or text me first. She planned on just leaving the candy on the front porch, but my significant other opened the door, so it's his fault. And on and on and on. I finally told her I wouldn't be reading or responding any further. She responded with good. The silence these last 10+ days has been golden. But I feel like the teenager in a horror movie who mistakenly thinks the axe murder is gone, only for them to pop out of the closet later. Thanks for watching. Do you have any similar stories to share? Don't be shy and drop them in the comments below. Then like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.